Hello everybody, my name is Ian Kirkpatrick. I'm an author and robot, and today we're doing a book review of Liv Miles' novella Warmth. You can see paranormal novella Warmth. But before we get started, just a couple of things. Number one, if you enjoy what I do on this channel, please remember to like, share, subscribe for more, make suggestions, and I'll see about doing them on the channel. It always depends. Number two, Lemoy and Pitch Fit. If you would like to be featured on this channel, please check out those links down in the description below. Two different ways for your work to get on this channel, and hopefully authors and readers meet each other and find new content, because that's one of the things that I'm all about here, which is one of the reasons why I'm constantly reading indies and talking about indies. Though obviously that is not all that I read. Now, with that being said, let's get into the book. I don't think it's much of a secret to anybody that comes to the Friday night Loin stream that Liv is an active Loin streamer. She's super funny, and so of course I had to check out her book and get to know her and what she is working on, really. She's a supernatural / paranormal romance writer. I think this specific project features vampire, fire witch, and demons. We'll get into that with the synopsis. This story is about 100 pages, so it's a super quick read, and if you'd like to go and support her, I highly recommend that you buy her book. It's not expensive, and check out her YouTube channel where she shares spicy opinions such as racial discrimination is bad, so you probably shouldn't do it, and go and read Nietzsche and the Nazis for some spooky parallels to probably the current timeline. Spicy book reviews are, of course, some of the best book reviews, and her channel and Goodreads page will be linked down in the description below if you would like to check them out. Anyway, her book is not political in nature at all, thank goodness. So if you're down for some vampires, witches, and like your stories short and sweet, check it out. Also in the book, you will definitely find her authorial voice. Like, that's one thing that I really, really love about writing. Even in fiction, you really get to know how someone thinks through and how they talk through how they write. It's pretty much unavoidable no matter what level you're at with your writing skill. Your voice comes through one way or another. Your perspective comes through one way or another. That's not saying that you agree with what your protagonist necessarily is doing or the morals that are all of the morals expressed in your stories, but your point of view does come through, and it's a very nuanced conversation. It's very hard to describe just in passing, so that's a video all on its own, so I'm not going to get super into it. But Liv's voice is obviously there, and her humor is also there, though it's more muted than when we're in the chat. Point being, the authorial voice takes on different shapes and different characters, their perspectives, word choices, plot choices, character choices that all typically expose different ways that the author may view the world. Not saying, again, that there's agreement in the author of the things that the bad characters do, just their presence there. There's so much nuance in this conversation. I can't without just sounding completely ridiculous. So, I mean all of this in a good way, and it's one of the reasons why I love reading books. And if somebody is confusing me, like on social media, with their behaviors or their actions, I'll actually go and read their book in an attempt to try to get to know them better, how they use rhetoric and all of that, because you actually do get to see some level of the author's real life rhetorical devices through how they frame stuff in the book, if that makes any sense at all. Okay, moving on. Without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this book. The story opens with Ariel getting sexy with this guy named Jordan in the back of a car. Well, turns out that Jordan is a little too eager to nibble on Ariel in a way she doesn't want, because he is a vampire and he's lusting for her blood. He won't take no for an answer, but Ariel's got her own secret. She is some kind of fire witch. So when he won't back off, she induces an explosion, but the biter is stunned, giving her enough of a chance to run away. While at first she runs from Jordan, his charm eventually wins Ariel back, and she can't help but forgive him for thrusting his teeth into her skin prematurely and mildly against her will. He didn't know better, you know? He's just a little baby. Jordan works his charm like a pro, and all of the convincing works. They're interrupted then, just as Jordan's getting cozy with Ariel again. Jordan's twin brother, Ryan, appears, who asks Ariel if she really had wanted to be there, if she really volunteered her blood to be drank by this guy. After blocking her eyesight so that she can't be caught in Jordan's charm, Ryan gets the real answer, and that was, yeah, I don't want to be fed on. Help me, please. So she's running away from Jordan with Ryan, and they ultimately end up with Ariel setting Jordan on fire and his body turning into beer-soaked ash because, well, decisions were made, not out of malice, but out of teenage stupidity. That's all I'm going to say. The next chapter starts with the first glimpse into Ryan's perspective, and I have to share the exact line, which is, "There is no justice unless we seek it ourselves. There is no answered prayers. There is only action." So, Ryan is definitely in a cult. Probably. It actually turns out he's a warlock, but, they pretty much look like the same thing. And Ariel, you need to get better at picking men, because as soon as Ryan started saving her, she's like, Ryan is pretty hot. He looks pretty much just like this other guy that was macking on me, and he came to my rescue, so, he is, like, double hot. Well, yeah, it turns out that guy is, cursing you, Ariel. Anyway, not only is he cursing Ariel, but he's also summoning a demon to torment her and then kill her because she needs to pay for killing his twin brother. She's a murderer, a hot, super duper hot murderer with an hourglass shape, and he doesn't know why he thought she was pretty cute, She's still pretty cute, but like dangerously cute, and he's also angry. So starts the rivalry and revenge plot between Ariel and Ryan. I can't even blame Ryan for feeling like Ariel's a cold bitch who would never care about her victims, considering her mother is like, lol, who cares about that kid? Don't let that get to you, darling. He was an idiot, and it's fine that he's dead. It's probably actually a good thing that he's dead, so don't let it get you down, sweetheart. Ultimately, this ends with Ryan and Ariel working together in some way, and Ariel having to remind herself that they're in so much danger, like too much danger for her to be admiring just how hot Ryan also is. Like, please withdraw them butterflies. There's serious danger afoot. Little did she know, fear is a natural aphrodisiac. Haha. True story, though. And that's why that's why you take partners or romantic interests to scary movies. There's an aphrodisiac in the feeling that you're gonna die. And anyway, these people get super thirsty about halfway through the book, even while they hate each other, but especially. But it's actually especially because they hate each other that they're getting super thirsty, because hatred also, like, dries out. I always get confused when I try to do metaphors for thirst. They just really freaking thirsty, and the hate amplifies the thirst like a heat lamp, okay? So all I'm saying is, this story's gonna end. All I'm saying is, how the story's gonna end, because magic ends with a K, and you know what else ends with a K? Yeah! That's happily ever after for people that don't normally shout. In case you were wondering, the other one is which also feels pretty accurate for the ending of a romance book. That's happily for now, FN. HFN. Anyway, so that's the basic premise. In case I wasn't clear, also, Ryan and Ariel end up having to work together because the demon he summoned also turns on them and puts Ryan in danger because demon's going to betray you. As you do. So, pacing. This story is very fast-paced. It jumps off right with action at the beginning. It being a novella makes that a really good thing, because if your novella feels like it's going slow, you might have a bit of a problem. It goes from point to point very quickly with little lag or slowdown between plot moments. If the summary I just gave wasn't any indication, and the length of this video, of how quickly this book moves, there's really just not a lot of extra pork or exposition dumping or slowdowns in the text at all. In a way, that's really great, because recently I've read quite a few stories that put on the brakes for a lot of insanely slow moments where even the author feels like they're bored with their own story and they're just trying to get through the boring parts to get to the good parts. And this didn't have that problem at all. In fact, it read like the author really liked her story, enjoyed writing her story, and enjoyed her characters all of them. Mild writing aside incoming. If you've heard me talk about character creation before and author's intentions coming through, then you've probably heard me say that you can typically feel it when the author hates one of their own characters, like absolutely seething hatred. That's not to say that you can't have bad guy characters, but if the author actually really hates a character for reals in their hearts, that seething usually comes through the book, and it doesn't make me hate the same character as the author. It actually makes me not really care about the bad guy, and it actually kind of makes me start questioning the author and the author's intentions and the narration of the story, because now you're breaking the narrative voice or the narrative wall and the intentions of the characters and turning this into a match of the author specifically hating this character in a world that the author doesn't exist in, if that makes any sense. Generally, whether it's characters or whether it's a part of the story, if any of those things the author actually truly hates, or finds it boring, it usually comes through and reads that way to the reader as well. Also, there's a difference between a part just being slow and a part that comes through as the author's intentions of, ugh, but I have to do this small business to get to the good part. This story did not do that. She genuinely seemed to enjoy her characters and the storyline that she's created, and makes this and that alone makes the story more enjoyable. That is something that I will specifically note with the other two romances that I've talked about on this channel, the Lemon Bar one and the School Bad Boy Club one. As much as I might not have been into the sexual part of those stories themselves, or the characterization of those, it was very clear that the authors were doing what they loved, writing what they loved, and that's always something that I have really liked about romance authors and romance readers. They just love, and they love the genre, and they love what they're doing, and they love the stories. They love the characters, even the extremely flawed characters that you might find in dark romances, and they love going through those journeys with those people. It's a genre full of people who just love that style of storytelling and what comes with the moniker of big R romance. I'd wager also that's why the conversation around the romance genre expectations gets so passionate. But after posting my last video talking about genre expectations and the conversations that happen in that, because every time you talk about genre expectations and marketing, the conversation gets heated, because there's the personal version of, well, this is what I think about genres, and then there's the marketing aspect, which is actually what it is when you hit the bookshelves, and why you need to pay attention to what market expectations are for these genres. And like, you can have your personal taste with it and the market, but the personal taste is not the same as the market taste. Anyway, I'm not going to get into it again because it gets so heated to talk about genres that I'm going to contain it to the videos about genres. Anyway, when you're a lover of something long established and someone else comes in saying, no, screw you, accept what I do while I change the version of what's been accepted and is accepted in the marketplace, you're going to get heated glances and probably heated conversation. So, I don't really think necessarily coming into the conversation and saying screw you and flapping all of the establishment off of the table is necessarily correct when it comes to genre expectations. But again, that's an aside moment. When an author likes their work and what they're doing and the characters in it and the base around it, the readers and the readers who enjoy those expectations, it shows in the storytelling. When an author doesn't like their base or attempted audience, doesn't like certain characters in their story or certain parts of their story, that also shows through with the author's respect and love for both the audience, their characters, and their own story. And again, this book did not suffer from that, because it really read that the author enjoyed the genre, enjoyed her characters, and just had a good time with it. Descriptions. The descriptions were also well paced in here, interesting and thorough where they needed to be. Specifically in the horror of the attacks, it seemed like there was some kind of mild, maybe twisted enjoyment in writing some of the more brutal descriptions, like the murdering of Jordan. But that's just to say the author took her time to paint the pictures that she wanted to in action scenes, also without taking super long, because they aren't long-winded. Oh, and both Ryan and Ariel sported some gothic looks, and I was for it. Goth/emo fashion is fun and not used enough by normal main characters. I'm not just saying that because Joey dresses like an emo, okay? The character development in this book. So my biggest gripe, or crit, whatever you'd like to call it, is that I don't think that this book had enough character focus for me. I mean, Ryan went from seemingly decent to angry mofo at, like, the speed at which post-nut clarity hits you. Let me clarify. I've been noticing it more recently as I kind of analyze my reactions and other people's reactions to the same books and what I'm paying attention to in books, that I really am a character-driven focused reader. So I don't think that this gripe will necessarily bother readers who like the genre and plot-driven novels more, but my gig is knowing who the characters are, watching them make choices, learning relationships, seeing them change, and watching the psychology of these people play out. That being said, this book felt like it started in the wrong place for me, but that's just because that I wanted to see more character development to understand the choices of the people that were the main focus here. But again, for a novella and for plot-driven readers, this may not bother you as much. I think this novella would have been stronger if it had started a little bit earlier than it did to give the reader time to establish who Ariel is and her general relationship/thoughts with both Ryan and Jordan before she was necking with Jordan. Especially if, leading up to the necking, Jordan already was using his vampiric charm and we could see Ariel falling right into the trap. There being some tension of if she is in love with him, or why is she already so head over heels with this guy, there's something weird going on. Establishing the relationships and dynamics between the three also would have upped the stakes and made more sense of the shifts in their perspectives, specifically with Ryan getting so angry after immediately saving Ariel, and also knowing that his brother was kind of a problem child. And I get also loyalty to the family, but again, that's where the lack of emotional and relationship development kind of hurt this for me. Something that really underlined this difference was when Ryan found Ariel and Jordan and interrupted, very much to protect Ariel, and then covering her eyes so he can get a real answer. So he knows that Jordan is pushing buttons, is crossing lines of consent, and cares more about getting the truth out of Ariel than just taking his brother's word for it. So he seems kind of disappointed that his brother is taking advantage of Ariel with the decisions that he's made to become a vampire, but at the end of the day, he also shot immediately hot hatred at Ariel to go and summon a demon for revenge, when he also knew that Jordan was being a pushy predator on the girls at his school. With the switch on Jordan and Ariel, and then the surprise at the end, made me unsure of where Ryan's morals laid and just how he felt about what Jordan did overall, especially becoming a vampire, and especially with what's revealed at the end of the novel with why he became a vampire. Now going into world building, another thing that I wanted to understand more was the dynamics of the magical creatures in this world. I didn't need exposition, but again, just seeing characters interact and the openness for which characters talked about magic or didn't would say a lot about how magical creatures are known and treated in this world. Ariel was a fire witch, and it seemed like something familial because also her mother was a fire witch. Ariel also spoke briefly about how the townspeople burned witches before, which is also historical, but I don't know the extent of the historical and the made-up context in the story, and if there were any more recent cases of burning of witches, because regular townspeople, mortals, whatever, are aware of these different mystical creatures. I don't know how common it is for people to know that vampires really do exist and what weaknesses vampires might have in this universe, because the only intro we have to them is through Jordan macking on Ariel at the party that night, and then mentions of Ariel setting papers on fire in class and people having suspicions, but like nothing past that. I got Sabrina the Teenage Witch vibes from this, which is more of the Ariel is aware because she's among special class of people who know about supernatural stuff exists, just like Sabrina, where her and her family traveled to and from the magical realm and knew of magical creatures and did their magical thing. But that's only a guess, since there wasn't really a whole lot of world building in the area to express how the supernatural got along in the natural world. But I did like the casual nature of it, and the bottom line here is just that I wanted to know more about the world because I was interested and invested. Sabrina the Teenage Witch with Melissa Joan Hart was a show I really enjoyed as a teen, so these vibes I liked here, and I just wanted more. Relationships, risks of being found out to both her, Ryan, and Jordan, especially with how Ryan was doing dark magic on his own and didn't seem to have the same kinds of fears about it as Ariel had. So I was left wondering, why was that, and how was a warlock different than a witch, and how they related to their powers, and it could have something to do with how Ryan was better trained and acclimated to his powers, whereas Ariel was having issues, but again, that's somewhere that the world building didn't go. I was curious what Ryan's relationship with the natural realm and people were as a warlock, and were vampires well known, to the point that they could have fan clubs in real life made popular thanks to Twilight and the popularity of vampire fiction. which would be a pretty funny take, and I kind of want that book now. I know, some of these are stupid questions, but they are all things that tell me how these characters would relate to the world around them. So, there's also the mention of cops being told about what happened to Jordan and how all of the town knew Ariel's secret. But again, there was no basis for what we know to be the norm of how regular society treats the paranormal or the supernatural. So the stakes aren't really obvious, and the police never come looking for Ariel or even question her about the last time she saw Jordan before he died, nor did she tell her mom or any confidants that she might have had about what happened or the consequences that might come back to get her. All of the consequences were only Ryan's revenge plot. So the mentions of the cops and Ariel's paranoia read more as unfounded. This is another area where allowing the characters to interact and slowing this down would have helped express the stakes and implications of this world and allow us to know how Ariel and her whole fire stuff, her whole witchiness, interacts with the world around her, why she would want to suppress it because there are these dangers, which we really didn't see the dangers other than, again, this interpersonal thing, whereas it would be that way even if she didn't have magical powers, because generally, yeah, if you kill somebody, their family doesn't appreciate that you've killed their family member. An interesting thing to do would have been showing Ariel being paranoid at school and talking to classmates, even though nobody actually knew what happened or blamed her. And that would show a level of paranoia and fear that she associates with her powers and with her background, and why she wants to suppress them to be more normal, even when nobody knows and nobody cares, like a hypersensitivity. And that would have been really interesting too. None of this is specifically to be critical of this book. It's just what I look for and what I'm thinking about when I'm reading this stuff. Generally, my expectation is just when I'm reading a book or story, if you tell me something, I either want to see that it's true or I want to see the characters in a situation that shows me that they're wrong, but they may not know that they're wrong. So either of those things. Going into characters, I'm not going to spend too much time on this subject specifically since I already said a lot of what I felt about character development and what I wanted more of with each of the individual characters. However, I did want to mention that Ariel's mom came off as so brutal. She knew that Ariel killed a classmate and was mourning over it, felt bad about it, and also worried about burning at the stake. And also worried about being burned at the stake. And her mom was like, people die, okay? It's okay. Just go to school and get this kid off of your mind, all right? Distract yourself. It's fine. People die every day. If her mother's disposition is the norm for witches, then I can kind of understand why people would want to burn witches. That's all I'm gonna say. Mom came off even colder with her daughter when she said, okay, I see that you're crying, but are you gonna go to school or what? It's like, Mom was like, I've already got plans for the day. You need to get out of here, kid. Oh, and Ariel's mom also. Ariel is obviously struggling to manage her insanely destructive fire power, especially when she's stressed out or emotional. I was wondering how much Ariel's mom knew of this and if she was just really cool with sending her daughter into a more stressful situation while her daughter was struggling, which could basically cause Ariel to burn the school down and maybe kill more of her classmates by accident when she loses control of her powers. Or was Ariel's mom completely ignorant of how difficult of a time Ariel was having with her powers and thought that she had them more or less under control, and so there wasn't really this big deal of it? This kind of understanding changes how diabolical or negligent Ariel's mom comes off. A screw the mortals and humans, what happens happens and you'll figure it out just fine, sweetie, is a legit persona for the mom character to have, and I want to know where she lands. Also, I was kind of expecting this to become a demon meets witch romance where the demon summoned by Ryan would pair up with Ariel and they'd fall in love and then defeat the revenge plot together. I mean, it didn't happen that way, but also the demon did come and talk to Ariel at the end of the book in sort of a way like that, without the love. The dynamic between Ryan and Jordan. So Ryan and Jordan had a very interesting dynamic that I really liked. There was the dark magic of Ryan and Jordan being jealous of it, so he became a vampire. Was very interesting. And again, I would have loved to have more time with them, to have more development of these characters and their rivalry and how that different development affected maybe their closeness, their relationship, first with Ryan developing his powers and then Jordan making his choices, and how Ryan might have judged Jordan's choice to become a vampire, but he loved Jordan so much as his brother that he was trying to help him cope, but then he saw his brother doing these diabolical things with manipulation and lack of consent and was trying to help. Like, was he trying to help his brother? Was he judging his brother? Was he dismissive of his brother doing these things? It would have been so interesting. And then did Ryan ever blame himself for Jordan becoming a vampire because Jordan became one because of his jealousy? Like, there's so much at play in that relationship that we don't get to see at all, because it's not really a focus of the story in any way. But the dynamic setup is so rich, and I just wanted more and more time to see this play out between these characters. Pretty much every question I have is just an offshoot of I'm interested and I want to see more of these characters and scenes between these characters to better understand them and their relationships and how they ended up where they did, making the choices they did, and how they feel right now. To talk about a trope really quick, I am so attracted to you. Like, for real, my friend. All I'm going to say is I laugh really hard every time I'm reading a romance book and it's just like randomly inserted adoration of the love interest. Like, we might be on a cliff in hell about to drop into the fires of eternal suffering with Satan overhead tormenting us with our worst nightmares imaginable, but gosh diggity dang it, you do look so fine with that hourglass shape that I would like to make babies with and have just a happy 1950s life with you. Oh my gosh. You're gorgeous. Hell be damned. Or I guess we be damned to hell. It's so funny every time. For the perspective of the story switches between the perspectives of Ariel, Ryan, and then the demon that Ryan summoned. That was an interesting choice at 65%. Also probably why I thought that he might fall for Ariel and they would team up against Ryan at some point. But, interesting enough, this story could have been told totally from Ryan's perspective, and Ariel could have been viewed as the villain. In part, this is how it went sometimes with Ryan's POV. It's just you also had Ariel's POV showing just how out of control she was on her own and how much she felt bad. Though she really didn't try to contact Ryan to be like, hey, so I'm sorry, can we work this out? Instead, you get glimpses of Ryan being less forgiving and Ariel being more, oh dear, oh no, I didn't mean to, but not actual her reaching out to him to be like, so we need to talk about this because I messed up. Like, I didn't try to do that. I suck is what happened. This is one of the reasons that I think it's more important to have at least one more chapter before the start of this whole thing to establish dynamics, relationships, risks, and to bond the readers with the characters, because with the way that this started, I really didn't have a reason to really be into Ariel other than she was technically Jordan's victim, but then Ryan was technically the victim of both Ariel and Jordan, and Ariel did kill his brother, so he's not technically in the wrong. He just also revenge like that doesn't help anybody, and you never go to demons for help. They're not there to help you, friend. In the ending of the book, the demon tells Ariel she's a witch and she should embrace who she is and what she is. This feels like a conclusion to a lesson or a character journey that wasn't quite earned. Like, we didn't really get to see Ariel struggle with her rejecting her abilities, shoving down her abilities, just because this story moved so fast. So she was like, oh no, this is bad. But I never actually saw her say, I don't want to be a witch, I want to suppress these things, and then struggle with connecting with who she is or what she is or where she's becoming. And I think that's just something that got lost by it being such a short story, because when you write a novella, a lot of things get locked out if you don't plan to write them in there. Anyway, what I'm saying basically is that this was a novel written as a short story, and there was probably at least twice as much content readily able to be explored and desired to be explored that wasn't put in here. Oh, and not to be too spoilery, but at the 90% mark, the story skips forward in time and Ryan is suicidal and about to jump off a bridge, and it's that time skip that devalues his suicide attempt for me and the power of the reunion of the two, because I never actually got to see his fall into despair after learning the truth about his brother and the extra betrayal. And again, I think this is a full-sized novel squeezed into a novella, and so much nuance and so much character development and so much of the intrigue of this and intention of this story was squeezed down into what became a 100-page book that went from plot to plot to plot and had so much fruit there to play with character dynamics and character development, if that makes any sense. Overall, I think there's a meaningful story here, but it moved just so fast that it was unable to explore the nuanced subjects, dynamics, and the world in which everything was built. Instead, it's more of a quick-paced, plot-driven story about a witch, a murder, and a revenge gone wrong with a hiya. So that is my review of Warmth by Liv Miles. If you're interested in it, I highly recommend you go check it out. Then let me know what your thoughts are in the comments down below after you read it. Again, it's a quick read. It won't take you very long. So there's that. With all that said, thank you so much for watching. Have a great weekend and don't die.
Was that Wayland Cross in the trunk? Do you know, or is that something that's still being figured out?
The person in the trunk was not Wayland Cross.
Is he in trouble?
We don't know who did it, but as the owner of the car, the longer he's missing, the worse it looks for him.
Cross isn't a killer. For the last couple of years, the average number of murders in Baltimore has been over 300, and it's been going up. Mind you, that's only whatever the badges count as official murder, and believe me, there are people that don't count when they die. Wayland? If you're down here, tell me. I'm not talking to the badges, I've been looking for you. They found a body in your trunk. Why? Did you do that? To the left, plain black letters read along the wall. You walked in the corridor. Once that ends, you chose the dark is on the right. My vision goes blurry, flickers black and black and black for longer intervals until I can't see anything at all. I'm not screaming anymore, but my voice echoes back to me. Where the hell am I? You're dead, Josephine. Even smart people do stupid shit sometimes, right?